pretty much everything we know about time is restricted to our daily experiences. We know something about ourselves, something about our actions, our movement through life, and we know something is changing. Certain aspects of life are undeniable. You are there, which is an undeniable fact, in whatever form. And there is something constantly changing around you. Every time you try to reflect on this you, it is a little different. The shades are different. The texture is different. The feeling is different. The emotion is different. But you are still the same. How do you explain this constant feeling of something being same and something being different? Every moment you reflect on your life, there is something that has not changed at all. And there is something that is never the same. The way we confront this weird feeling, weird experience of change and unchange at the same time is by inventing time. Time helps us to organize our lives. Theoretically, conceptually, it gives us a framework for tracking change. But in actuality, what is time? Is it something real? If time is real, then what about all those things that are changing? Both time and what is changing through time cannot be real. Either the change is real or time is real. Exploring the depths of time is Zen. And Dogen Zenjii emphasized on the simplest and direct ways of coming back to the present moment, coming back to reality, coming back to truth, which is Zazen or simplicity. The Soto school of Zen, which is one of the most popular Zen schools in Japan, was founded by Dogen, and it revolves entirely around Zazen. It is not just sitting meditation. Because in all sitting meditations, you are doing something. For example, Vipassana, witnessing the breath, is also a sitting meditation. It's a very simple sitting meditation. You just sit and watch your breath. That helps you to stay in the present moment. That helps you to connect with time the way it is, existence the way it is. But for Dogen, that is doing too much. If that is doing too much, then what would he say about all the different meditation techniques and methods? He would dismiss it all. He would say, all those are deviations because you're unable to sit quiet. If you can sit quiet in the truest sense of the phrase, sit quiet, sit silently, then you don't need any other method. You don't need any other technique. He is direct, he's straight, and he makes perfect sense. But the question is, can you sit quiet? What is the challenge in sitting quiet? Why should sitting quiet be so extraordinarily difficult? It's because of where you are. It's because of what is happening that is different when compared to how things used to be. There was a time when meditation instructions could be extraordinarily simple. There were many factors supporting a meditation technique. Reverence to teacher, deep connection with teacher, waiting for days, months, sometimes even years for a right teacher to come along. And if he gave you one sentence, because you were waiting for it, because you were longing for that teaching, that one line becomes your entire practice. You keep coming back to it again and again and again. Imagine you're waiting for a teacher and you have not been introduced to a method, a way of connecting with yourself. You've read a few books, you've interacted with a few people. Your daily conversations remind you that there is something deeper, there is something that has to be experienced, but you don't know how. And you hear that there's a teacher traveling and sharing his teachings. And when he meets you, he's going to give you that perfect method, that perfect technique that you have been waiting for. He won't just prescribe something that is common in general. He looks at you, he looks into your eyes, he looks into your spirit, he sees where you are, and he gives you the right method. And you're waiting for this teacher to come along. Not just a teacher, but the teacher. Someone you are waiting for. Someone whose words can truly transform you. And then when you meet this teacher and he says, sit quiet. You will not ask questions. You will not doubt this. You will just go and sit quiet. From then onwards, everything you're doing as your practice is to hold on to those two words. What am I doing wrong? I'm not sitting quiet. All my internal questions. Am I doing this correctly? Is this the right method? Did the teacher truly understand who I am before giving me this method? All these doubts disappear slowly because you have already spent enough time meditating on these two words. You were not even introduced to these two words, but in your waiting, in your longing for the teacher and the message, the meditation had already begun. There is no better setup for such an experience than a monastery setup. Now, Dogen was a Zen teacher who taught in a monastery setup. There was a time when the difference between daily living and monastery life was not too much. Just a small rearrangement. People lived in such a way that they only had to be introduced to the idea of watching their actions. But most of their actions were perfectly all right. There was no necessity to change them. They lived in the real world doing real things very close to the mind and the body. For them to become aware of themselves was not an impossibility. Cooking, cleaning, farming, tending to livestock, weaving, almost all activities were performed with full involvement of the mind and the body. There was not much disconnection between where you are and where your action is happening. But we are living in a completely different world when compared to that. Now, our mind, our body, and our actions are stretched over a vast landscape, where even to simply accept a practice like sitting still, watching your actions, you have to do many things. Because just the way you are, you will not even know what to watch. And because your mind is filled with so many thoughts, so many doubts, so many questions, and that direct connection and reverence to the teacher is lost, and you've not been waiting for months and years to get your technique, you can find a technique wherever you want. Even without a teacher, you will find innumerable disembodied techniques that are floating around in space. You just have to ask for it, the technique is there. But it's a dead technique. There is a difference between a living technique and a dead technique. A dead technique has nothing to do with you. It was taught by someone to somebody. It was relevant for a particular time to a certain individual coming from a certain teacher, coming from a certain spiritual tradition, meditation tradition. So if you belong to that tradition, if you connected to that lineage, your preparation was already going on. Right from your childhood, you are being prepared for this moment, this encounter with the teacher. Zen has this culture. Ancient Hinduism had this culture. Almost all mystical schools have this culture. Children are introduced to the deeper concepts of life through stories, through allegories. And then they are waiting for this meeting with the teacher, waiting for their initiation, waiting to receive the method. And even without knowing, they are preparing themselves. In that waiting, they are cultivating silence. They are cultivating stillness. They are more watchful of their actions. They are mindful of their speech. They are mindful of their thoughts. The cleansing process has already begun. Even before you meet the teacher, internally, you have begun understanding the difference between thoughts that take you away from yourself and thoughts that bring you closer to yourself. Excessive desiring, greed, lust, anger, fear, jealousy, these are all kept in check by this constant reminder that you need to be ready for the teacher. You need to be pure. You need to be clean. Otherwise, how can you receive the message? What the teacher is giving you is just a possibility, a seed. If your ground is not fertile, it won't germinate. If you're too closed, if you're too rigid and fixed in your ideas of life, then you're too barren. The seed won't germinate. If you're filled with too many ideas, too many doubts, then even if the seed germinates, you will smother it by your own doubting. So this clearing of the ground was so important, and because it was naturally happening as a part of life, a teacher like Dogen can happen, who can simply come along, answer all your questions, guiding you towards a simple sitting quiet meditation. It's not even meditation in the sense that you're doing something. His method is just sit quiet. Don't do anything. What about thinking? You're not doing the thinking. You're not the thinker. Thoughts are just coming and going. A question arises in your mind, but it's not your question. It is the question of the mind. Why are you bothered about it? Why are you trying to perfect a technique? Why are you trying to sit quiet? Isn't that contradictory to say, I'm actually trying to sit quiet? Either you're sitting quiet or you're trying. You cannot be doing both together. You ask him any question, he removes the unnecessary from the necessary. Zen is an extension of Buddhist teachings, but it is a way of separating the wheat from the chaff. It is a